Welcome back to Layman's Law School, where two hillbilly lawyers demystify the law, talk about the issues of the day, and have a drink or two on a Friday.
Got to.
Welcome back, Reid.
Hard week again.
Yeah.
We did excellent work again, and we're here to, like you say, try to. You'll give the expertise, and I'll kind of give the hillbilly version of it. How about that?
To Supreme Court precedent.
Cheers.
All right. So, a lot going on in the law, in the news.
As always.
That's right. That's right. But it has, there have been some headlines, some viral things going on, as well as some sort of landmark decisions that have come out. We're going to start out today talking about the leaked information about the Supreme Court decision and to overturn Roe v. Wade. Reid, what have you heard about this?
Not a lot, Chace. Not a lot. I try to keep my foot on the pedal for what we do.
Right.
But I know that it's being overturned, and that I assume that abortions will be illegal, and the federal, that does not mean state, so states can decide whichever they would like. And I don't know if it's not necessarily illegal, it's just not approved or not allowed by the federal government.
Well, it's not a protected right anymore.
Protected right.
Right. And so just to sort of unpack this a little bit, the reasoning and the logic behind this basically highlights a split in the way in which justices interpret text and interpret actual statutes. And that's really where the rub in this whole thing occurs, because if you look...
Well, that's every case. You know what I mean? And maybe, a lot of viewers don't understand that, is that the Supreme Court isn't really making law. They're interpreting law.
That's right.
So if the biggest issue is Senate and Congress, they make the law.
That's right.
And then the Supreme Court says, okay, well, this is what y'all said, and this is how we need to interpret it.
That's right.
So, and I think that's a confusion in the general population.
Huge confusion, because what happened was we wrote the Constitution, and they made a certain number of amendments. And within that Constitution, what it did is it actually framed out the boundaries within which Congress can actually sort of write laws and infringe upon rights of everyday citizens. And so that's why you have the right to protect, you protect against illegal search and seizure, questioning without a lawyer.
But
you have the
search and seizure is a good example.
Yeah.
So for an example, you can have a case that is fact specific with search and seizure, and it goes to the Supreme Court, and they make a decision on that. That doesn't reverse the law. It just narrows the issue. And so I think that's a lot of confusion on the general population. Like if there's no law against or for abortion.
right.
And it's fact specific. Roe v. Wade is the one that everybody knows. And so now they're not necessarily changing, they're interpreting the facts differently. Right or wrong, but that's what's happening.
Sure, yeah. And people's right to an abortion prior to this was established basically through the 9th and 14th Amendments. And the 9th basically saying, that the government doesn't have rights, so the people have rights. And then the 14th basically saying that you cannot deprive somebody of life, liberty, or property without due process. And the important word in there, okay, that people don't focus on is liberty, okay?
Right.
And within liberty, a lot of your rights as a citizen come from just that the Supreme Court's interpretation of that word liberty. Can a person be free in American society and not have control about the way they raise their children?
Right.
The Supreme Court has said, in decision after decision, that you cannot have liberty in this country without a law that protects your right to raise your children, okay, that you have that right, and that anybody that infringes on that right, it becomes unlawful because you're depriving them of their right to liberty in this country.
And that's why it's so, we've talked about it on Law Call and other things. We do family law specials, is that it is so difficult for, and the general population gets angry about it, but you see a bad mother, bad father, whatever, it is so difficult. Like that's the I think the hardest thing in the law is to take away the rights of a parent for a child. Like you have to, it's got to be over the top.
Well,
and that's the reason.
Yeah, the child has to be at risk.
Right.
In those situations,
it can't be just hey, he's a bad mom or she's a bad mom, he's a bad dad. You have to show crazy amounts of evidence that the child's in danger. And the reason for that is exactly what you said, is that we're supposed to be living in a free society, and you might disagree with the way I raised my children. I might disagree with the way you would raise yours.
Yep.
But that doesn't really matter.
No.
And you can't come in and take it, and I can't come in and take it. But
right.
there still has to be that line, and that's where that gray area is. And this is what this whole
decision, this argument,
is.
right? Yeah. And so, I mean, I'm of two minds about this in particular, but I want to just sort of round out a little bit more of the idea of what that term liberty means, and some of the other decisions that have been sort of brought down to protect. So, like for instance, interracial marriages. Okay, you have a right to marry who you want. Right. Okay, that's contained. Well, that was not the case. Yeah, it's one of my favorite cases. Loving v. Virginia established that a white farmer in Virginia had a next door neighbor woman. They basically helped each other bring in crops for years and years. They grew up together, fell in love. They got married, and interracial marriage was illegal in Virginia at that time. And they basically banned them from Virginia. Right. And two guys, first year out of law school, brought that case all the way through the court systems, and we argued it in front of the Supreme Court and changed the law in America. There's a great documentary on it.
And that brings go on a tangent, but it also brings up the fact that when state law is opposed to federal law, federal law wins.
That's right.
And so that's the same situation. If a state enacts a law that says, you can't marry or you can't have interracial marriage, but the federal law says you can. Right. Federal law wins.
That's right. And so when you're thinking about federal law and state law, what you want to imagine is like an umbrella. And so that federal law basically provides an umbrella under which state law can operate. Right. And if state law tries to go and put their umbrella over federal law, that gets shut down. That's right. Okay. All right. So conflict. You can make things a little more restrictive. You can change gun laws, that type of thing. But when you start to infringe upon the provenance of the federal government, then that's the provenance.
Man, you're just a encyclopedia.
Sorry, man.
That's the wrong word. It's a dictionary, thesaurus. Yeah. Encyclopedia would be wrong. But anyway, continue.
Well. So medical decisions, another type of right or that the court has protected, the right to basically birth control, and a lot of these things, all the things I'm talking about, these decisions to marry, the decisions to how to raise your child, the right to sort of have autonomy over that, and your right to privacy with it. All those things kind of led up and pushed up against this decision about whether or not the government has a right to come in and say and interfere with a decision made between a doctor and the patient about what happens in a situation where the person doesn't want the pregnancy and wants to end the pregnancy. And so the reason why this is so contentious, of course, is because of the feelings people have about the actual act of it, and the ending a life, whether it's a heartbeat or a fetus or an actual human being or whatever you may believe. That is a very serious, consequential idea, and these are very difficult things to think about when it comes to the law. But what the decision actually says is that when they're trying to interpret what liberty means, one of the things that they go to are the historical traditions of American society. All right. And one of the things that Alito points to is he says that you have to look at when it was written to truly understand what was meant by the words. And this is where it comes in, interpreting what was in the actual statute, what was in the amendment. He looks at what was in the American tradition at the time of the writing of the amendment when it says what is meant by liberty. And his opinion is that a right to an abortion was not a part of the American tradition and historical sort of idea of what it means to be free and liberated. And I think that the actual fight is between whether it's like, do we have to say abortion, or is it I have autonomy to make decisions about my health, right? And if you're talking about that, I think that was in with because if you can't search my papers, you definitely can't tell me what to do with my body, right? And
so, and so to kind of break that down, I think what the justices are supposed to do, and I think they do a fairly good job, much more than I could, and this is what you're saying, is you have to look at the language when the language was relevant, right? So for the viewers, it would be, I'm old, I got nothing, I'm not up to date with the new age words, but my son, for example, he uses cap, no cap, right?
Cap.
So cap and no cap.
Yeah.
So those words are different today than they would be 10 years ago.
That's right.
For example.
Yeah.
So you have to look at language when the language was spoken.
Right.
And that, because words change.
Yeah.
Literally, they've added now literally can be used as the exact opposite. Because people say, I literally died, right?
Okay.
And so now Webster has changed
just because
it
of
where
how
it
it's
can
used.
Be correct. So, but 20 years ago, if somebody said literally died, they go, you're crazy. You didn't literally die. You're standing right here.
Yeah.
And so language changes, and the meaning of words changes. So you have to go back to when what was meant by that word at that time, and that's what is difficult for the Supreme Court justices.
Sure,
and it's difficult for us now to understand when they make a decision.
Yeah, and here's I think here's a part of the rub in that we have. They'll claim these guys are detached. These guys are not in touch.
Sure.
And to a degree, that's true.
Sure.
To be a Supreme Court justice, you have to be so steeped in the law and be so devoted to that understanding, in particular constitutional law, that you are beyond law professors. This is what you eat, sleep, breathe, and that's all you care about. And so these guys care a great deal about these issues of interpretation.
Sure.
And it really, really matters to them. And they do care exactly how it's going to sort of fall and how it's going to affect people. But what you need to remember as a citizen out there is that they're making these decisions based on what they believe to be their role within the government.
Right.
Okay.
And they may disagree with the ruling that they are actually writing.
The result of it.
They are.
What's going to happen.
Right. They may disagree with it. But it's one of those things where they, like you just said, you're kind of in this bubble where you're analyzing. In the law, you have to analyze every word. So, I know you're a very fast reader. You can read a novel in no time. But if you read a case, it's going to take some time because you have to read every single word, and because every word is very, very important. One single word can change everything.
Yep.
Everything.
Absolutely.
And we've talked about it a little bit, like, go back to the Bill Clinton impeachment with everybody picked on him about the word is. That's not a terrible argument. What does that mean? So you think about that. If you break down every word in a 100-page document, and you have to analyze every single word, there's going to be some different interpretations.
Absolutely.
And you're going every single word, and we have to go, hey, what was every single word? What did that mean in that time?
Yeah.
And so, and they might be right, they might be wrong. I'm just saying that's a difficult chore to do.
It is.
So, what is your opinion on the leaked vote? I guess it would be.
Yeah. So I'm a little bit torn about the whole thing. Okay, because of how much it puts in jeopardy. And I believe that it's probably legally and logically sound reasoning.
Sure.
But there are some ethical, moral issues that I find problematic. Yeah,
and I will say this, Chace, before you finish, justices do have that right to say they can not only interpret the language, but they have public policy. So that's another factor.
Sure.
So anyway,
yeah,
go ahead, please.
But I'm of the camp where I believe the abortion should be legal, but as rare as we can possibly make them. I think that there are certain.
I wish I could disagree with you, because I think the exact same thing. So, gosh, I wish we had like an ESPN fight going.
No.
My thoughts are very similar.
It's a very sad and difficult decision.
Absolutely, either direction.
Yeah, in either direction. That's right. And if you have somebody that's flippantly making this decision and like, I'm into this and I don't care, I'm also of the opinion that person probably doesn't need to be having children,
right?
And so it may cost us, and maybe that person should have the child, and that child should be adopted. And this is a difficult decision to make. Right. I mean, we're talking about ending lives, potential human lives, and so it's very, very difficult. But I think one of the things that the court is going to do here, and I think it's interesting at the time at which it leaked, because there are a lot of state elections occurring right now, in which we have
not a coincidence.
we have a lot of Democratic voters that are not motivated at the moment,
right?
And there's a lot of statewide elections that are occurring prior to June, and so people don't know this a lot, but don't know this, but. You know, if you have statewide elections and you're all of one party, then you can redistrict a lot of the lines, and then what they
gerrymandering.
It's called gerrymandering. Right. So they
redneck threw all the term for you.
Very good. They draw the lines based on what will get their candidate elected.
Yep.
And if you can get a bunch of state appointed, or get a bunch of state people elected that in your party, they'll redraw the lines. They do it all the time.
Yep.
Then you can get whatever person you want. Your party's elected to Congress, and so it motivated. I think it's going to motivate a lot of Democrats. But I mean, one of the things I think that this might need to do, because it's going to throw into question. This is the problem with the decision. It's going to throw into question whether or not you can write a law about a person's right to marry who you want to marry. Raise your child the way you want to. Right. Because there's nothing in the Constitution that says, "Hey, you can raise your child however you want.
Right.
You can marry whoever you want." Right. Not in the Constitution. Okay.
Right.
Those are rights that are basically imbued by the court. They're saying, "Hey, when we look at liberty and we look at that word and what it means." Mm-hmm. You can't have liberty in the United States without having these particular rights, right? And so up until this decision comes out, right? Making a medical decision about whether or not to have aborting a fetus was one of those decisions where the court said, "Hey, you can't have liberty unless you can do this." And what the court is actually forcing, I think, the American people to do is ultimately decide, say, "Hey, we're going to have to vote enough people in to make these changes, to actually change the Constitution and actually do a constitutional amendment that says, hey, these rights are ones you can't infringe on."
Right.
And it might be time to do that so we can stop having these arguments.
And that is a very, very good point. And that leads to the and like I said, before I went to law school, I didn't understand anything. You know me, I'm all about the process. How does the process work? How do we get from here to there? It's not so much the grits and gravy of it, but what's the process? So in this situation, what you're saying, like right now, abortion is legal because of a case, not because of anything else.
Yeah, it's a right.
Right? It's a case.
Sure.
So if you make it not a case, like, because the laws are interpreted with cases. Now, if it's in the Constitution, they'll still be. Yeah. You can say you can drive a red car.
Yeah.
Right. And so then the Supreme Court has to decide. Well, is a darker shade of pink a red car? Is all these different fact specific, but their job is to interpret cases. That's not the law. That makes the law once that's fact specific. But if there is a constitutional right, that is the law. That is the law.
That's right. And you can't infringe on it.
Right.
And so
until you have that, you're just going to have fight. It's just going to go back and forth forever.
Right.
Forever.
Yeah. And so, I mean, when we had the constitutional amendment abolishing slavery, there's no question about so
right. It's not a case.
There's
it's
nobody
not a case.
Exactly. Nobody's challenging that.
Right. You can't say, "Hey, my facts are different than this guy's facts."
Yeah. And this is what's really frustrating for a lot of people about if you start looking at the actual bills that are passed in Congress and that are proposed, it'll start out as like a 10-sentence bill where it says this person a person has the right to I don't know
skateboard on the side of the road.
Yeah,
how about that?
Yeah.
Just something
canoe down Main Street if there's a flood. Right, starts off with that 10 sentences, and then by about I don't know the 15th draft, it'll say that. Boy Scouts of America in Wisconsin gets $2 billion set aside from this particular fund for their whatever. People just try to plug in whatever they want, and it's like special interest groups so they can get reelected.
Right. I'm a politician's son, so I'll just say this is what I'm looking directly into the camera. This is what I hate about politics.
Yeah. Okay.
Is because if I truly believe in something, let's say that I want kids to be able to skateboard on the sidewalk, right? And I propose that, and I got a bunch of people saying, yeah, let's let kids skateboard on the sidewalk. By the time it reaches where it needs to go, it has 30 other things added to it. And then, let's say you're a congressman, a senator, whatever, and you vote against it. The ad you see is Chace Hawk voted against skateboarders,
the Freedom of Children Act.
on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mention you were actually for that part, but you weren't for the other 30 things that were added to it by the lobbyists that get it to the voting floor.
Yep.
Which is insane.
Yeah.
And so, but the snid bit, the 7-second world we live in, all you hear is Chace Hawk doesn't like kids on the sidewalk.
That's right.
Even though it meant giving $2 jagillion to Reid Sanders to retire on, you know.
Yeah, it's a difficult, messy thing, but it's part of one of the things I really love about the law in that there's a lot of religious beliefs out there, philosophies that people have. But when you want to come down to the basics of how people in a particular culture want to treat each other and what they consider to be fair, right, and just, you look at their laws and you judge people based on that.
Right.
And you'll have a good idea of where the moral compass is for those people. And I think, honestly, that's one of the biggest things that we have in this country to sort of export. We talk about soft power. People want to be here in part because this is a place that at the very least, based on the law, you're perceived to be equal. You're perceived to have rights that you can enforce. And it doesn't matter if you dig ditches, if you're a lawyer, you're a politician, you have rights, whether you're a celebrity, which brings me to our next.
Oh, look at this. That is, man, you're getting you're getting professional.